Caitlin Clark is furious heading into Game 3 of the WNBA semifinals against the Las Vegas Aces. The Indiana Fever didn't just drop Game 2, they had it ripped out of their hands. This wasn't about being outplayed, and it definitely wasn't about talent. No, the story of this night was about how the officials practically delivered the win to Las Vegas on a silver platter. 41 fouls called in total. 16 in just one quarter. Players hitting the floor on nearly every possession. And yet somehow, the headlines framed A'ja Wilson as the hero, while Lexie Hall played through a back injury that makes her questionable for Game 3, enduring punishment that no player should ever be forced to tolerate. If this is what counts as playoff basketball in the WNBA, then the league has a credibility problem it can't keep ignoring. What makes this even more maddening is how Indiana still found ways to fight through the chaos. Remember Game 1? That wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Indiana walked into Las Vegas's fortress, the home of the two-time champs, and dismantled them with discipline. Kelsey Mitchell, locked in from the opening tip, put on the game of her life with 34 points, proving she could own the spotlight against the league's best. The Fever moved the ball, controlled the tempo, and shut down the Aces' attempts to play fast and flashy. It was calm, composed basketball, and it worked. Then there was the Wilson factor. On the night she was being celebrated as MVP, she turned in one of her worst shooting games of the season, channeling her inner Angel Reese. 6 makes on 22 attempts, with multiple rebounds. Indiana swarmed her, forced her into uncomfortable spots, and didn't let her find rhythm. She had no answers. Indiana executed with precision while keeping fouls to a minimum, which should have been impossible in Las Vegas's building. The result? A 16-point blowout that sent shockwaves through the league. That was the Fever's message. They weren't just happy to be here. They were ready to compete for real. A'ja Wilson's just a big boy. Look at this. Throws Lexie Hall on the ground. Everything she does is illegal. Look at this one. A moving screen. And then pushes Lexie Hall. You think they ever call a foul on A'ja Wilson. But even in that win, people noticed the imbalance. The whistle already seemed tilted toward the Aces. The foul numbers were skewed, though Indiana's dominance kept the issue buried under the scoreline. Still, you could sense what was coming. Las Vegas was embarrassed, the league's golden franchise had been punched in the mouth, and payback was inevitable. And A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to finish there. So Game 2 arrived. The Aces didn't just want to win, they wanted to send a message back. The question wasn't whether they'd respond, but how far they'd go to claw momentum back. The answer was as ugly as it gets. In the WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in while the offensive player is trying to get the rebound. But we know A'ja Wilson only receives fouls. From the opening minutes, Las Vegas abandoned basketball for brute force. Forearms, shoulders, collisions on every possession. The referees let it all slide under the label of playoff physicality. But when you stack up 41 fouls and 16 in one quarter, that's not intensity, that's chaos. The Fever never had a chance to find rhythm. It's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And then when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it. Every trip down the floor was chopped to pieces. A team built to run and flow was forced into broken half-court sets, the exact opposite of their identity. And while Indiana stumbled through stop-and-start possessions, Las Vegas lived at the free throw line. I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. Yeah, a lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, getting me ready for tonight. No one embodied this battle more than Lexie Hull. She shouldn't even have been out there. Her back was already banged up from game 1, and most players would have sat. But Hull strapped in, stepped on the court, and fought. And how did the Aces respond? They targeted her. Every cut, every defensive rotation, every box out. There was extra contact, extra shoves. She hit the deck more times than anyone should in a single game, but she refused to fold. Instead, she went to the perimeter and buried 5 3-pointers, tying the Fever playoff record. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't clean. It was defiance, pure and simple. Afterward, she admitted she was sore and needed constant treatment, but she kept pushing through. That's not a quote you throw away. That's the definition of grit. And yet, the headlines celebrated Wilson. 25 points, 9 boards, 5 steals, 2 blocks. The box score glow up. But what those numbers don't reveal is how they came. Wilson didn't win this game on skill alone. She bulldozed her way into the paint, forced collisions, and got whistles Indiana never saw at the other end. Fans watching weren't fooled. They saw how tilted this game really was. Aaliyah Boston lived that tilt firsthand. 13 rebounds and 10 points look respectable, but those numbers don't tell the story of constant elbows, shoves, and no-calls. Every board she grabbed was a war. Every shot attempt was contested with more body than ball. This is a third-year player being treated like a crash test dummy, and instead of breaking, she kept competing. Her line looks steady, but in reality, it was survival mode from start to finish. Odyssey Sims deserves credit too. She poured in 18 points, often while dribbling through double teams, absorbing hacks, and trying to create something out of broken possessions. Every time she found a rhythm, the whistle blew to stop the play. Every time Indiana had momentum, a foul call reset the game. Sims's buckets weren't just points. They were small rebellions against a game that refused to let Indiana play free. That's the tragedy of Game 2. The Fever didn't get beat. They got dragged into a mud fight they never signed up for. Their resilience showed in Hull's shooting, Boston's rebounding, Sims's drives. But each spark was smothered by whistles and Vegas's brute force. The Aces didn't expose Indiana's weaknesses. They leaned on foul-heavy chaos, and the referees backed them up. And here's what everyone should be asking. If Vegas needed both the officials and dirty play to scrape out a win at home, what happens when the series shifts to Indiana? What happens when the Fever return to Gainbridge Fieldhouse with their crowd behind them, burning with anger over how Game 2 unfolded? Because let's be real, this wasn't proof of the Aces' greatness. It was proof of their desperation. If the referees tilted Game 2 toward Las Vegas with 41 fouls and endless stoppages, the other factor that swung the game was strategy. Specifically, how did the Aces completely neutralize Kelsey Mitchell after she exploded for 34 in Game 1? That's the real tactical story. In the opener, Mitchell torched them from everywhere. Catch-and-shoot threes, hesitation drives, mid-range pull-ups, even fearless attacks at the rim. Vegas had no answer. But by Game 2, she was smothered. Held to just 13 points, she didn't suddenly forget how to score. This was the result of a focused, suffocating game plan. Cut off her air supply and force anyone else to beat them. The Aces put multiple bodies on her at all times. Even when Mitchell didn't have the ball, defenders face-guarded her like she was the only person on the floor. Every time she cut, she absorbed bumps and elbows. Screens set for her were blown up by hard hedges or flat-out collisions. By the time she found daylight, the shot clock was bleeding away and the quality of her looks had vanished. The difference wasn't skill, it was pure physical denial. And while the tape shows disciplined defense, living through it in real time felt like bruises, frustration, and constant whistles interrupting rhythm. To physicality's out of control, that's for sure. I mean, you can bump and grab a wide receiver in the NFL for those first 5 yards, but you can do it in the W for the whole half court. You put 2 hands on somebody like that, it should be an automatic foul. They have the freedom of movement. There's no freedom. And I'm not saying that we're not fouling too. Not saying that. Saying it's out of control. What's wild is even Becky Hammon, Vegas's coach, admitted afterward she wasn't thrilled with how rough the game had become, Imagine that. Her team benefited from the whistle, from the stop-and-start chaos that shattered Indiana's flow, and yet she still expressed frustration at the level of physicality. That detail matters because it proves what everyone watching could see. The outcome wasn't built solely on smart adjustments. It was shaped almost entirely by the officiating, which allowed, and in some cases rewarded, the Aces' hyper-physical approach. Inside, Aaliyah Boston was still grinding. She finished with another double-double, 10 points, 13 boards, but those numbers don't show the pounding she absorbed. Every rebound was contested with shoves to the back or arms across the body. Every post-up turned into a wrestling match. Vegas also got clever. They spaced the floor, pulled Boston out of position, and then let Aja Wilson or Jackie Young drive into gaps where help was late. It wasn't artistry, it was exploitation. They knew Boston couldn't be everywhere, so they made her choose, and her stat line doesn't reflect how much ground she had to cover. And then came Lexie Hull. Vegas may have succeeded in erasing Mitchell, but they couldn't erase Hull. This was a player who was questionable to even suit up after her back injury in Game 1. Yet she not only played, she tied a franchise playoff record with 5 threes. Each shot was a dagger, a reminder that Indiana wouldn't fold no matter how ugly things got. Hull didn't just survive, she swung momentum, forcing Vegas to respect her shooting even as she winced with every fall to the hardwood. That's toughness you can't fake. So yes, the Aces executed their adjustments. They packed Mitchell in, forced the Fever into secondary options, and leaned heavily on whistles to bail them out. But now the chessboard flips. The next 2 games aren't in Vegas. They're in Indianapolis, where 17,000 fans have been waiting to unleash the kind of energy that changes series. Here's the truth about Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's not just a court, it's an amplifier. Every run feels bigger. Every whistle gets magnified. Every defensive stand feeds into a wave of noise that rattles even the most experienced teams. We've already seen opponents crumble late because the Fever crowd refused to let up. There are no quiet moments in Indy, and while Las Vegas rode crowd energy to edge out Game 2, Indiana now walks into an environment where every call, every shove, every missed foul will be met with a roar too loud for officials to ignore. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Our fans, they show up, and they show out, and so fresh, just, using that, our own energy, but also using the energy in the crowd. I think it's going to be really great for us. That matters. Officiating bias thrives in silence. When a shove on Boston goes unnoticed in Vegas, the game moves on. In Indy, 17,000 people erupting forces referees to acknowledge it. When Hull gets knocked to the floor on a cut, the crowd demands accountability. Home court isn't just about friendly rims, it's about collective pressure on every decision. For the Fever, that noise is fuel. Hull, taped up and battling pain, already proves she won't stop. Boston's work in the trenches only grows sharper with fans lifting her energy. And Mitchell, who had her worst playoff night in years, now walks into a building that chants her name before she even takes a shot. You can sense her frustration boiling over from Game 2, and at Gainbridge, that frustration is likely to transform into aggression and scoring fireworks. History is on Indiana's side too. Teams that win Game 1 in a best-of-5 already tilt the math. And the Fever didn't just win Game 1, they blew Vegas out on their own floor. That kind of confidence doesn't evaporate because of one whistle-heavy loss. If anything, it hardens resolve. Add in a packed home arena, and suddenly the pressure isn't on Indiana. It's on the Aces trying to prove their dominance wasn't built on referee whistles. Yeah, we're excited. I know the last time it was the first playoff game in a really long time, so to be able to have 2 more for our fans that have been there with us all season, I'm really excited for that, and we definitely do feed off of their energy, so really looking forward to it. Let's not forget how dangerous the Fever have already been at home this season. Double-digit deficits erased, opponents stunned by second-half surges, and a fan base that doesn't just cheer, they sustain. Those are the same people now furious about how Game 2 unfolded, ready to create a playoff atmosphere that feels more like a tidal wave than an audience. Even Hammond herself admitted, "Our experience there has not been great this season," which is as close as a coach gets to admitting Gainbridge is a problem. That's why these next 2 games are more than just a continuation of the series. They're a referendum. Can the Fever take everything, the fouls, the bruises, the no-calls, and turn it into power? Can they feed off the injustice of Game 2 and flip it into energy that fuels a knockout punch in Indy? Every sign points to yes. Paul already set the tone by refusing to quit. Boston's composure under fire is unshakable. And Mitchell, silenced once, is too proud and too talented not to answer back. Add Clark's leadership from the sidelines, rallying her teammates with every possession, and you've got the makings of a hostile takeover back home. So while Vegas may have celebrated their adjustments in Game 2, the reality is simple. Indiana didn't break. They absorbed. They learned. And now they return to their house with all the momentum waiting to be reclaimed. Game 3 at Gainbridge isn't just another stop. It's the pivot point. The Fever aren't coming home to survive. They're coming home to put the aces on the ropes with the crowd as their weapon and revenge as their fuel.